a major plank of budgeting is initiated, and in terms of even the estimates, are originally, done within the executive, in the National Treasury. That is where the budgets for all ministries, the departments of government, the various sectors are negotiated and figures put on them. In fact, Ayub, let me tell Kenyans that by the time the budget estimates are coming to Parliament, they are so locked and they have such ceilings that Parliament, in spite of being the budgeting authority, cannot change much. You can move money within a sector, but you cannot blow out or go beyond what is priorly negotiated and set by the executive in the budget. And remember, when we are talking about the executive, you know the head of the executive. Number two, Parliament does the work it does. But after that, the money goes to the executive. And the president is the chief executive officer of the state. The executive arm of government is then to implement. You've seen people asking, even on social media, Kaluma, tell us what you've done for Homa Bay Town. And they consider me rude when I tell them, it is not my work to do those things you call material development. Ask President Ruto. That is true. It is the executive that then implements the various material developments, we need around. Kaluma will say this money should go to education, but it is the executive. And ideally, it should be President Ruto doing everything. Let me tell you, that is the idea.
Why do you say so?
Yes. I'm still talking with you in terms of the law.
Okay.
As the chief executive officer, if it were possible, I can tell you, then he should be the one ideally doing everything. But we understand the country is big. We understand the sectors and ministries are many, and the needs of the people are varied. And you cannot leave all that to a single person called the president to be doing it. And because of that, we have systems through which we have delegated the power of the president to various officers within the executive to support him. What am I telling you in terms of law? That the president remains the principal. These people are delegates exercising executive authority. And in most cases, they are people he appoints, if you leave aside his principal assistant, who is the deputy president. So I'm saying this, Ayub, to explain to Kenyans that it is not something unexpected that the president should be visiting places. In fact, if it were possible that the president can be everywhere at the same time, and that is the ideal situation. And let me therefore go to the question you are asking. Why do we have skewed development? And are we seeing, much more? I can tell you even under President Uhuru, to a large extent under President Kibaki, where the executive came from in their largest numbers, always got more development. I can tell you it is a very unfortunate situation. Currently, you see even how, cabinet secretaries are shared across the country. Up to the time we went to broad-based government, I don't know which cabinet secretary was coming from the entire Luo Nyanza. I imagine none. And that is unconstitutional.
Owalo was.
Owalo was, I think, in charge of ICT, and let me say he did some good work. But you go to, the core ministries, which immediately matter to people. The ministry in charge of roads, the ministry in charge of energy, the ministry which relate to finance and dictate how resources go. They have been in particular regions. And these regions, in terms of real development, as you rightly say, have gotten very skewed and favorable development against the others. And that is why, personally, I want to encourage President Ruto to be traveling more. Do I tell you, Ayub, that since I became a member of Parliament, not an inch of new tarmac has been seen in Homa Bay Town.
You were elected in 2013?
I can tell you.
It's your third.
And I'm budgeting, I'm in Parliament for 13 years. And you ensure there is money for roads, but nothing at all to date. Yet, Makali will tell you, we had an issue with the budget committee the other day, And of course, we are now where we are. We were asking them as budget committee, how come when even opinion polls are done, it is just members of budget committee you see from position 1 to, okay, except Makali and a few.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that when the president moves around as the chief executive, he's able to ask, how come we gave money, or we were given money to implement such work, and people are complaining about Mau roads? How come Homa Bay town constituency is part of Kenya, yet there is no single road, there is no electricity? I can tell you,
yes,
Homa Bay town, as part of the larger Homa Bay county, will be hosting Madaraka Day this year, and we want to welcome everybody to that Madaraka Day. Even before the president comes, because he's the chief executive, the roads we've been crying for are being done in Homa Bay. A stadium is being, done properly. And you remember stadia were being done by the executive across, but in Homa Bay we were struggling using our county funds. You know what I mean? So a lot is happening. Let us encourage the president. In fact, Ayub, let me end by saying, I mourn these people who are saying the president should be somewhere in the office just seated. The president cannot be in the office seated. The president has people using his delegated authority to implement development across the country. And I think the best thing any president should be doing is to travel across from Mount Kenya, go to Lower Eastern, go to Kambani, go to Coast, and check that the people your authority has been delegated to and the people you've appointed are actually serving the Kenyan people. Otherwise, you'll have those cases of corruption we've been talking about.
Okay, so, but still...
That, as panelists, we're actually discussing these issues. But before I get to the issues, let me just confirm to my colleague Wamumbi that if there is anybody who talks the reality on the ground, it is Makali Mulu. I never lie. And I can't join the club of liars. And I'm sure he knows who are the liars in Kenya.
You're not a member of the lying squad.
Yeah, I'm not a member of the lying squad. He knows who are the lying squad. But you have raised a very important issue, Ayub, and I really want us to focus on that issue.
Yeah.
The issue of equity in sharing national resources. You know, when the president visits an area, and Kaluma has confirmed that now that he's visiting Homa Bay during the Madaraka Day, that visit was supposed to be to my constituency, Kitui Central, but it has been moved to Kaluma, and you can hear the kind of goodies he's listing, which is going to gain. The question is, Ayubu,
you are going to host Mashujaa.
When the president, that might be a topic for another day. And for your information, by the way, Ayub, the president has visited Ukambani about 3 times. But what has happened, he only visits us on Sundays to attend church services. I'm not downplaying the issue of attending church because I'm a Christian. But I'm saying when you attend church, you can't be asked questions. You can't sit to plan a church visit because development issues, you say I'm coming to worship. So how I wish he comes to Kambani and we plan the way the other regions are planning in terms of development. But Wamumbi should note that the president has visited us about 3 times. Even in Kachakwa came to my constituency twice. The president was in my constituency once, but we were worshiping.
They never spent the night there?
No, they came in the morning, you worship of 1 hour and a half, and they left. So we are still waiting for the visit to come. But to me, all said and done, budgeting is in the house.
Okay.
It's our mandate. The only problem we have is, there's a new item which has been introduced in our budgeting process, which is not supposed to be there, called presidential directives. So that when the president goes to Homa Bay and goes to Nyeri, there are things he's going to promise people there, which are not in the budget. And at the end of the day, somebody will be coming to the budget committee, talking to the chair, telling the chair, we have these presidential directives which must be factored into the budget. And that's where the problem is. When we are doing the budget...
So who is the person who comes? A member of the budget committee?
That's why I want to explain to you where the issue is.
Okay.
And I think this is a serious issue. We must take it serious. Now, what happens? When we are doing a national budget, the so-called annual estimates, the things you do, and this is Treasury now, before it goes to the ministries, you look at the world economy and say this year the economy is projected to grow by this. Currently, we are now doing the budgets. The projected growth, international growth now, is about 3.3%. Then you come to Sub-Sahara economy. You say Sub-Sahara is supposed to grow by this level. Then you come to Kenyan economy, which means there's a lot of data which has been analyzed before you even come to Kenyan economy. And it's on the basis of that, then you project your macroeconomic parameters like inflation, interest rates, foreign exchange reserves, foreign exchange, all those things. So it is a process. So when the president goes to an area and says, I promise this area, I'll give them a road worth 4 billion, a road. Nobody has subjected that additional budget allocation to the things I've mentioned. So it means you are destabilizing the whole budgeting process. At that point, when you are doing your budget now, we have agreed on what we call the budget deficit. Currently, we have agreed is going to be about 4.6%. Now, when the president promises 4 billion additional, nobody has looked at the impact of that to the budget deficit, which means you even now increase the budget deficit. And that's why you see, when we are starting the year, we say we'll borrow 4.5. Close of the year, we have borrowed 5.6% of the budget. So these are the critical issues. So we are saying, while we appreciate that the president should be visiting,
yes,
if I were the president, what I would be doing when I'm visiting Nyeri, because the budget is supposed to be done at the national level, I would be asking my PSO, my CS, what has been allocated in the budget for the region I'm visiting, so that the president will not be talking about projects which are already factored into the budget. That is not what is happening. Okay. And now what has been happening for areas like ours,
yes,
why we are crying,
yeah,
the few projects which get into the budget at the annual estimate,
yes,
get reduced at the supplementary budget.
Okay. With former Deputy President Gachagua in Parliament for 5 years. And I think we did with Makali. And I can't remember any pro-people thing or anything I can remember Gachagua for in terms of his contributions on the floor. And if there is, which they were in, without any, service you can talk about to others. And you remember, Ayub, when President Ruto mentioned Gachagua as his running mate, we were in this station. We went then to K24. I was at KTN. We were at NTV. I think...
You actually had a show with him.
We had a show. And if you go back to YouTube, you'll find them there. I went laughing, asking what, President Ruto, as a candidate then, so in Gachagua, against all the options he had. If you get it, I analyzed even the other options he had, including Kindiki, Moses Wetangula, there was Musalia Mudavadi, there was, the speaker, the former speaker, Justin Muturi, all who were handling and available to him. They said, this is a tragedy. And so I'm one person who was, never surprised that Gachagua could not serve a full term as a DP. In fact, the impeachment of Gachagua to me is among the easiest parliamentary decisions I personally had to make. But let me, emphasize something, just to clarify what Makali is saying. Number one, we've been complaining about the inefficiencies and, in our view, the incapacities of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, where Makali has, of course, been, serving. Ayub, there is something President Ruto is doing. And let me tell you, cumulatively, even though he's operating in a very constrained environment, if he continues the way he is continuing, this country will be shocked at how development has been spread and how much development he would have, secured to be done in his term. Okay. You go to Northeastern and you get people saying, oh, President Ruto is saying, nitatoa barabara hapa, nitaenda hapa, and they take it lightly. Some work is going on. He'll go to Homa Bay and he'll, say we are doing Gor Mahia Road, we are doing Ojijoteko Road. You think it is not being done. I can tell you, if you look across the country, cumulatively, this country is being, transformed. My wish were that, President Ruto were able to move much more, and the resources of the country were better. We are in a situation where I don't know whether Makali will confirm to you or otherwise. We are now talking about 50 million being given to constituency, which was initially actually given, but because of the constrained economy, with the collapse of the finance, bill then, the budget committee, guided us to drop it because it could not be done. But do you remember in the parliament, Makali, where we were with Moses Kuria, we were with, Akina Rigathi Gachagua, MPs would stand on public podia and say, any MP who does not have a transformer, I can donate more. I've hit over 100% coverage. You remember Moses Kuria, you remember, these people.
Okay.
People who are, deliberately skewed development, to their sides. And that is why I tell you, sometimes you can get people saying, oh, why are these political arrangements necessary? But I tell you, Makali, it ensures equity. Do I tell you, are you...
As you finish up, yes.
Yes, as I finish. In the composition of the leadership of committees in Parliament alone, and now you've known the powers of committees in terms of directing resources within their mandate. Out of the 25 substantive committees, 12 of the biggest co-economy committees were held by people from one region. Even as we speak, Makali, who is the chair of the committee in charge of roads, infrastructure and transport? Who is the chair of the committee in charge of energy? Who is the chair of the committee in charge of, finance and, planning? Remember, these same people from one region were also the chair of budget and appropriations. The chair of, up to 12 of them. Okay? And so when we come up and say, we are in a presidential system, open up so that we can have the competences of all MPs compete to lead. Okay. And so that we have spread, we take it for granted. But some of these things are good in terms of, progressing our state forward. Okay. There is something that Makali Mulu said that at times a minister or a PS as an accounting officer will come and say the president has requested this. I started by saying, number one, is the chief executive of the country. Number two, being the chief executive, he has a right to then look, because remember, mostly when budget comes...
How do you then budget for that?
And we pass it. Now remember, when we budget, for instance, for education, yes, we seldom say, this is to Homa Bay Primary or Ndiru Primary. The allocation of these monies is then left to the ministry or to the department or sector.
Okay.
What if the president goes and finds that you have a budget, Honorable Makali, the president visits Kitui, and he finds the budget committee where Makali is a member, Kaluma is not a member. You gave a blank budget, and this budget has been directed to one area as he was complaining about. Okay. Isn't the president in his right place to say, no, I'm the chief executive and the head of state for the entire country, but this must be done. And what is wrong? What is wrong then? Yes. The president telling it to the delegates I told you about, the PSS and others, and for the delegate to go to the Budget and Appropriations Committee to say, when the president moved around, he found things skewed. He's saying this must...
Parliament, the majority of lawyers have their way, the minority have their voice. I can tell you, if you go to the Hansard, nothing which has been said we have never said. We say them. But the problem is, you have a chair who has been appointed, not elected, by the same executive. So when he gets instructions that do 1, 2, 3, what do? More likely do what it takes. There are times we have even had budget committee reports changed. What you agree at the committee level is not what go to the House. At that time, you don't have the numbers to change. You have to make an amendment. So we are saying, what has happened? Just a normal executive capture. And we have talked about this many times. I'm a member of Parliament. But any time we talk about Parliament, I always ask myself, are we talking about an ideal Parliament, or are we talking about Kenyan Parliament, where we know what is happening in there? Because if we really talk about Kenyan Parliament, we'll change the way we analyze some of these issues. The other thing is a requirement, a constitutional requirement, that for budgets to pass, we need public participation. When the president goes to Homa Bay and says, I'm giving you a level 4 hospital, where is public participation? At that time, as he factored in, after the hospital is constructed, how many doctors shall we require for that hospital? What equipment will be required? Where will it come from? Because it's a default function. Now, you have hospitals all over the country, which are actually shells. Because what has happened is they have been constructed using national government money, but the person who's supposed to equip them is a governor. The governor doesn't have those resources because if it's about share money they are getting is so little. Okay. So you find it's a very complicated, and that's what I'm saying. If I were the president, I'll consider, even before you make a decision, what is in the, because once something is factored in the budget, then it triggers a process all the way to the governor level. The governor will know, I have a level 4 hospital which has been planned for my area. On that basis, you start planning for drugs, for human resource, for equipment.
And
but when you just announce...
function, is it? It's still accounting.
It is a devolved function.
Okay.
Ayub, can I rebut on... Just before you go to him. You know, Makali, we've been with you in Parliament since the 11th Parliament, for 13 years now.
Yes.
There is an approach that President Ruto has adopted, which I can tell you is very good.
Which is?
He meets leaders from a region. Last week alone, you remember the President met leaders from the larger company. He met leaders from Homa Bay County. He met leaders from, Western. And so that you may see President Ruto going somewhere and saying, we want this. It comes from a discussion and consultations with the leaders in terms of their needs. The first time I met President Ruto, I found him meeting the governors instead of waiting for the DP alone to be meeting them and reporting to him. And what I want to therefore request Honorable Makali is that when the President calls your region leadership to go and meet him, go and meet him. He's calling you as a head of state.
But what?
And I told you also that initially, it is the executive that will say what we demand, for instance, under the sector of education. Is this, if you just left it to MPs, it will not work out. And that is why I'm telling you, the President makes requests to Parliament, because the ultimate decision, of course, is in Parliament. And that is why I'm telling you, the Budget and Appropriations Committee under Makali has been weak. What is Parliament? What they are treating
is a representation of Parliament.
No, please.
Our report goes to Parliament.
Remember, Ayub, this Budget Committee, we nearly disbanded the all of it. Because this is the only committee established in the Constitution. And the only committee of Parliament whose mandate is set there. You cannot, for instance, amend if something were to be proposed unless there is prior approval and a resolution of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, both under the Constitution and under the standing orders. So it is easy for the committee within a committee to say, move this money here, move it there. I can tell you if Kaloma moved an amendment, number one, you will be told it has not come from the Treasury and it has not been passed by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And that is the law. Where I'm making emphasis on is that the Budget and Appropriations Committee should not treat requests from the various heads of the executive, whether they are portrayed as coming from the President or otherwise, as directives. It is a request. It is a request because ultimately they know unless Parliament, initially through the Budget and Appropriations Committee, says yes, it will not be done. But let us avail ourselves of meetings to discuss, because whatever discussions you have with the President will inform what the accounting officers then bring in terms of estimates for approval by Parliament. And where, Makali, the President has not invited you, like the meeting we had as Homa Bay leaders with the President, we asked for it. And you just say, there are things we want to discuss with you around the development of Homa Bay County. Okay. Not just Madaraka. Call the President to a table.
Are you forgetting you are in the broad-based government yourselves?
No, not necessarily.
Does the political climate favor you?
Yeah, we are not in the broad-based government.
Would you have met him?
You've asked a question, huh? You can meet the President any day.
Oh, Kaluma.
By the way,
Kaluma for the last 13 years in Parliament. It is only this year he's talking the way he's talking.
The question you are asking is a very serious question.
Yes. Can I get
whether it is because we are in broad-based government or otherwise?
Yes.
You know, there is this misconception being sung to Kenyans by the media and people who do not know well that there are some people in government, there are others who are not in government.
No, that's a fact.
You even come to the media and you get very, very sharp people. You remember, like the so-called